When parents contact me about sleep consultations, they often ask if I'm going to encourage them to put their child to bed early. They are usually asking because they have one of two concerns, maybe even both, about going with an earlier bedtime. They either don't think an earlier bedtime will improve their child's sleep, or they can't imagine an earlier bedtime working with their lifestyle or their work schedule. So, on this very first episode of How Long Till Bedtime, I want to address why I'm such an advocate of an earlier bedtime and how, after nearly 2 years of resisting it, early bedtimes brought more joy to my house and resulted in more quality time with my daughters. If you've been skeptical or resistant to an earlier bedtime for your child and sleep has been a struggle, I hope this episode will help you decide if trying an earlier bedtime is worth a shot. Hi, I'm Allison Egidi, a pediatric sleep and wellness coach and a mom of two. I love to help parents find solutions. This is How Long Till Bedtime. Last week, I was on a consultation call with a mom who has a 12-month-old who has always struggled with his sleep. We talked through a plan to help him learn how to confidently fall asleep independently and how to sleep for longer stretches. After a year of terrible night sleep and inconsistent naps, working full time, and having unsuccessfully tried sleep training on more than one occasion, this mom was exhausted and she knew that something needed to change. The call was going well until I told her that during the sleep training and recovery period, we needed to shift bedtime to no later than 7 p.m. She immediately burst into tears. I felt her pain. I had been there myself. When I asked her to tell me what she was feeling, her answer was the same answer that I would have given you for nearly 2 years after I had my first daughter. The concern was not getting enough time with her baby in the evening and her husband getting even less time with him because he got home even later. I shared with her what I want to share with you today, and I'm happy to report that after just a few days, her baby is sleeping 12 plus hours straight through the night, getting 3 plus hours of day sleep each day, and this mom is now a believer in the earlier bedtime schedule because the time with her baby in the evening may be a little bit less, but the quality is much better. So, why is the early bedtime so helpful for certain children? Once babies have a mature sleep rhythm, all sleep is not created equal. Just like you or me, babies and children have an ideal sleep rhythm, and if the timing of their sleep is in line with that rhythm, they will have an easier time falling asleep. They'll fall into a higher quality sleep, they'll get more restorative stretches of sleep, and they'll get the ideal amount of sleep. This is actually true for all of us. We all have an ideal sleep rhythm, but some of us are more sensitive to our rhythm than others. I, for example, am a pretty sensitive sleeper, and the timing of my sleep is everything. If I go to bed between 9:30 and 10 p.m., I'll fall asleep easily, and I'm most likely going to sleep through the night. Because I'm such a sleep nerd, I wear a device that closely tracks my sleep, and I have the fewest disturbances and the highest recoveries when I do fall asleep between 9:30 and 10. If, on the other hand, I stay up past 10:30, well, watch out, world. I could then easily stay up past midnight because I've caught my second wind. And while I typically won't have a problem falling asleep when I ultimately get in bed, I will most definitely wake between 3 and 4 a.m. and have a really hard time falling back to sleep. And my recovery, i.e., how restorative my sleep was, will drop significantly. For the vast majority of infants, toddlers, preschoolers, and yes, even some early elementary age children, A bedtime on the earlier side, like 7 p.m., is going to help them have an easier time falling asleep, help them sleep for longer stretches and through the night, depending on their age, help them get their optimal amount of sleep, meaning the hours they need to be their best selves, and allow them to get higher quality, more restorative sleep. In fact, for some infants, a bedtime even earlier than 7 p.m. is ideal. Now, I can already hear some of you saying out loud, ugh, but my baby goes to bed at 8 p.m. and sleeps until 7:30 or 8 a.m. with no issues. What's wrong with that? There is nothing wrong with that. If your baby is going to bed later, sleeping 11 to 12 hours at night, taking lovely naps, and acting well rested, well, then I say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Every baby is different, and babies who aren't as sensitive to the timing of their sleep often can tolerate a later schedule. But if your baby, toddler, or preschooler, or again, even an early elementary age child is struggling, I want you to stick with me here. The reason a 7 p.m. bedtime works so well for so many babies and young children is because that's when they're going to have their natural sleep wave, that natural pull to sleep. The first thing I want you to do is to start to look for your child's natural sleep wave. If you start to look for it, you're probably going to see the visible signs that this sleep wave has arrived. And you may also be able to see the visible signs that it has passed and their second wind has kicked in. If, say, during the 6 o'clock hour, you notice that your baby or child is particularly quiet, showing tired signs, whiny or grumpy, that's their sleep wave kicking in. If you then notice that they suddenly perk up, get wired or giggly, that's their second wind kicking in. If that second wind has kicked in, bedtime is going to be more challenging. Catching that sleep wave can help improve your child's bedtime and sleep tremendously. Another benefit of helping your child fall asleep with that natural sleep wave is that it allows them to fall into a higher quality sleep, which can naturally reduce or even eliminate night wakings. And it will help children get past a too early morning wake up time. The waking too early is a big one. If you have a child who wakes up way too early, I want to share a big counterintuitive secret with you. An earlier bedtime is almost always the very best way to get past a too early morning wake up. I know it's hard to believe and it really doesn't make sense, but it is so, so true. If you have an overtired child or a child who's going to bed later than that ideal bedtime in line with their natural sleep rhythm, an earlier bedtime should not equal an earlier morning wake time. An earlier bedtime should result in your child falling into that higher quality sleep. It should result in them getting more hours of sleep. And ultimately, it should result in them waking later in the morning. So, what do you do if you're open to the idea of an earlier bedtime, but you work full time and you don't get home until 6 p.m., or you have a partner who doesn't get home until later in the evening? Here are a couple things I want you to consider. It is absolutely possible to get home at 6 p.m. and have your baby or young children in bed by 7 p.m. I say this with confidence because until my oldest was 5.5 years old, I would get home with my girls from daycare every day at 6 p.m. And even if my husband was out of town, I could get them fed, bathed, and into bed by 7 p.m. Now, were we just relaxing and hanging out in the evenings? No. I definitely had a structured routine that I followed from the moment I walked in the door until the moment I put them to bed. And it took some practice to get that worked out. But by committing to that bedtime, my girls slept through the night, woke happy, so we had really pleasant mornings, napped better at daycare, and were happy little gals on the weekends because they were well rested. Once I finally committed to that earlier bedtime when my oldest was almost 2 years old, it's true that the quantity of our weekday time together may have decreased, but the amount of quality time we had together increased significantly. Now, if you have a partner who would be getting home just before this earlier bedtime or right when you would be starting the bedtime routine, be sure that your partner is able to put your little one to bed without resistance so that they can have that quality time together. When you have a bedtime that isn't full of resistance, and the earlier bedtime can help with that, or a bedtime that allows you to put a child to bed who isn't overtired, and both parents are actually able to put the child to bed, bedtime can be a really high quality time. If your partner misses bedtime altogether, have them prioritize quality morning time before work. Also, on this topic of benefits of the earlier bedtime, in my opinion, and I think this is equally as important, an early bedtime also has benefits for parents. When your child or children go to bed early, not only are they getting the sleep that they need and deserve, but you get your evenings to do whatever you want. You can tidy up, prep for the next day, relax and unwind, spend time with your partner, do whatever it is that would fill your cup or set you up for a smoother day the next day. And hopefully, having these evenings to focus on your priorities will allow you to go to bed on time so that you get the sleep that you need and deserve. I cannot tell you how many times parents come back to me after they've started the earlier bedtime and told me that it has impacted their own well being as much as it has impacted their child or baby's well being in a positive way. If you stick around to listen to this podcast, you're quickly going to learn that I think that your health and well being matters just as much as your child's. You matter. And when you're able to take care of yourself, you'll be able to bring the best version of yourself to each day, which makes it a little easier to be the parent that you want to be. Now, I know that some of you are still thinking, nope, 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 nope. This won't help my child sleep, and or this is not going to work with my schedule. I hear you. Like I said, that was me for nearly 2 years until I broke down one Christmas day and I hit my rock bottom. More on that in a future episode. But once I gave the early bedtime a chance out of pure desperation, that early bedtime changed everything for my family. Each and every one of us benefited, and we never looked back. My girls are now 7 and 8.5 years old, and my oldest goes to bed at 7:45, 8 p.m., and sometimes I actually miss having her go down at 7 p.m. because it gave my husband and me more time to connect and plan for the next day. So if you're still resistant to the idea of the earlier bedtime, I want to leave you with a line from Daniel Tiger. Try it, you might like it. Give it a try for 2 weeks. You can always go back to what you're doing now. All right, thank you for joining me for this very first episode of How Long Till Bedtime. I hope you'll come back and join me again. Bye for now.